Hello and welcome. So today I wanted to do a review of a new accessory bundle from Kyberlight called the Fallen Order Accessory Bundle. Now, if you're not familiar with Kyberlight, I'll give you a brief catch-up on who Kyberlight is and what they do. I've done a review of Kyberlight a couple of times before, but the short version is this is a Kyberlight right here. So it is basically it's sort of a nondescript aluminum tube with a button for power on, a button for color cycling, 2 sound fonts, a mute feature, recharge in the hilt, but that's pretty much it right here, machined aluminum. Now the thread size that a Kyber uses is the same as a saber forge, so saber forge parts will work on a Kyberlight. And when people ask things about the size of these things, it's somewhere between Ultra Sabers and Saber Forge. Once you get all the parts on it, it's more like an Ultra Sabers Aeon. But this is the base sort of unphenomenal Kyberlight model right here. So what Kyberlight has done is they are a budget saber. And there's people out there who say all kinds of terrible things about Kyberlight and say, well, why would you spend money on that when you could spend money on a Vader's Vault? Thing about it is Kyberlight is not a competitor for Vader's Vault. Kyberlight is a budget saber. So if you want to think about the Kyberlight and other budget sabers, think about things like Kybers or some of the budget sabers from POC Store. And that's around the same sort of features and sound quality that you're going to be getting with a Kyberlight. It's a budget saber. It costs a fraction of what you get or what you would pay for a Vader's Vault, and you usually get them a lot quicker because they're in production, in stock, especially since they only have one saber model. So the thing about Kyberlight that sort of sets them apart, though, is that they've created this budget saber, and then everything goes on top of the saber. So you can highly customize this thing, unlike a lot of other budget sabers. So it's a little bit more expensive than some of the other budget sabers, but that's because it has a whole array of pommels that you screw into it, a whole array of shrouds that you put over it that have holes for the buttons that are all lined up, and a whole array of emitters that you put on it and then secure with a screw. So you can get this thing to look like any number of things by taking advantage of their parts, or by using pommels from Saberforge. The shrouds and the emitters are specific to Kyberlight. So now that we're all caught up on Kyberlight, let me talk about the new Fallen Order bundle that they've released. Now I don't usually do new reviews of a new accessory bundle, but this time their accessory bundle is something that's significantly different from what they've had before. So here's the original Kyberlight pommel, and they've had a whole bunch of other models of these things. But one thing that Kyberlight pommels have usually had in common is that they are bulky. You can see this adds quite a bit of weight and quite a bit of size to the Kyberlight model. One of the things about it, though, that I've seen people in past make their own low-profile pommels. Because of this rise right here, it's kind of got a pommel built into it already. The Fallen Order bundle is the first time that Kyberlight has offered a low-profile pommel themselves. So this is the pommel that comes with it. And it decreases the overall size of the saber rather substantially by making use of this low-profile pommel. So that's something that's specific to this Fallen Order design. Here is the emitter that comes with it. Now you can see that this is definitely a Cal Kestis emitter style. There's a hole right here that the light from the blade is going to shine through. The newer emitters that Kyberlight has created and offered, originally they sent it with this thumb screw. Okay, but a lot of the thicker emitters, like the crossguard emitter that they offered, you could not use this thumb screw because the emitter was too thick and this screw wouldn't reach through it. A lot of the newer emitters, what they've done is they've started to bevel out a spot in it so that you can always still use the thumb screw. That's true of this emitter, that's true of their Darth Malgus emitter that they released after the fact. So their original emitters, you'll have to use one of the other included screws. You won't be able to use the thumb screw except for the real thin ones, like the just the standard metal sleeves. Okay, so the new emitter has a spot for that thumb screw so that it can actually go on. Let me go ahead and put it on here for you. All right, making the total length of this a little bit longer, but not unmanageable and reasonably sized, I think, for a saber. In terms of Cal Kestis sabers, this is actually short. Usually Cal Kestis sabers are a fair bit longer than this. But so there's the new emitter, a little bit more detailed than some of their other designs, but the emitter is what it is. It's interesting. The real star of this new accessory bundle, I think, is the Shroud. So previously, when Kyberlight has offered shrouds, they've looked like this. It's just a metal tube, usually pretty thin, holes for the buttons, carved or cut in some way to have some sort of grip or design. They've got different ones. They've had solid tubes before too, carbon fiber tubes, wood grain printed tubes, but it's all basically the same metal tube secured by 2 screws right there and there at the bottom. Now, the Fallen Order bundle has brought in their first machined shroud. So you can see that this is all, if you look down there, this is all one part. At least I believe it's one part. I haven't found any seams in it yet. Yeah, this is all one part, machined. So we've got a diamond knurl, kind of like you're going to find on a Maglite flashlight here, which makes it pretty good to grip. And then it bulges out here, and you get this this interesting emitter. I wouldn't call it a grip exactly, but this interesting detail on here. Now, one of the things about this emitter is if you notice where the buttons are, here's the original. Here's this one. So this rides a fair bit higher on the saber. So while this is to date by far their nicest emitter, it will make this whole bundle sort of an all or nothing proposition. Now, what I mean by that is when you put this thing on, the fit of this, I should have secured that. Okay, the fit of this is such that you can't use other emitters. The screws don't line up. This thing needs to come up about another inch from where it is right now, or I can't use it. So this is a great looking emitter, but it only works with either the Fallen Order bundle, a great looking shroud, but it only works with either the Fallen Order bundle emitter or the original sort of flimsy black one, or the tube with the angle cut. I think they called it a Kepler. But there are only 3 emitters in the Kyberlight lineup that I have found that this shroud works with, which is one of the fallbacks of it. One of the nice things about the shroud, though, is in addition to it being more highly detailed than any of the others, all of the other shrouds, when secured in place, have a gap at the bottom right here. Usually I put an O-ring in that gap. I usually find that I need 3 or 4 rubber O-rings in order to make it work. I need 1 O-ring here, and I need 2 or 3 here to split the difference between where the shroud ends and where the emitter picks up. So I need a couple in there and 1 down there. This new bundle that they've got, the fit is, even though it doesn't really work with any of the other accessories, the fit is substantially better insofar as when the screws line up on this, it comes all the way to the edge, so there's no gap in here anymore. And when you put the emitter section on, the emitter rides all the way down to the shroud for the holes to line up, so there's no gap there anymore either. So let me put this all back together. So let's talk pros and cons with this. The pros, this thing all fits together much more nicely than any of the other Kyberlight parts that I've seen. The fact that it removes this edge and rides right to the pommel. Another issue that people have had with Kyberlights, myself included, is the wobble of the shroud. With a lot of the other shrouds, because it's secured with these 2 screws, there's a slight wobble back and forth here. Because this one rides to the pommel, that wobble is not entirely eliminated, but mostly eliminated. If you put one little thing underneath here, or one little piece of electric tape, it would be completely eliminated. So the wobble is a lot less, the fit is a lot nicer, And the overall design on this is a lot more complicated and lightsaber looking than any of their other designs, in my opinion. The cons on this, because of the exclusivity on this, you can't use any of the other emitters, as I mentioned. You could use other pommels if you wanted. The other pommels would still work just fine. Here, I'll put a different pommel on it. Okay, so you can use other pommels, but you can't use other emitters. Another con on this is that with that low profile emitter, with that low profile pommel, since they've brought the emitter out and they've used less pommel, the saber itself gets more top heavy unless you're using a thicker pommel. So with a thicker pommel, the point of balance is right about here where you'd want it. With the thinner pommel, the point of balance is like way up here. So it makes the saber a bit top heavy unless you do switch it out for a larger pommel. One of the other cons on this is that Kyberlight sabers have a tendency to have hard edges on them. And this one does too. Right here on the bottom of this shroud piece, some of these edges are a little bit rough. You want to be careful with those. You can either bevel them off yourself, or if you're using gloves, you'll be fine. If you're not using gloves and you start gripping the saber up here, you stand the possibility of damaging your hands. One of the pros that I didn't mention is the nice blank space here on the emitter section. If you're an etcher or a crafts person, this is a really nice canvas on which to do something real interesting. The con to that is, since this is all so flat, this part scuffs easily. You can see a few scuffs in there, and I've only had this a couple of days. So because you have this polished edge, you can etch on it, great. But if you don't etch on it, you can scuff it accidentally. Other cons on this, if you're treating this as a Cal Kestis saber and you want it to look canon, this gives the idea of canon. For 501st Legion, this would even be enough, or Rebel Legion, I guess, this would even be enough to pass. But if you're looking for every single detail of a canon-accurate hilt, this is not offering it to you. For a Cal Kestis saber, this is a bit stubby and blocky. But in terms of a budget saber, it's a really nice budget saber, and it's a huge step in the right direction for Kyberlight in terms of their parts and how well all of these things work together. This is the Fallen Order bundle from Kyberlight. These parts are only available as a bundle currently. You cannot buy this shroud or this pommel or this emitter, as far as I can see, by themselves yet. But here it is, Kyberlight Fallen Order bundle. Hopefully this has been of interest to you, and if so, join me back for more reviews, and I'll see you next time.